As I scurried through the hallways one after another, listening to Alice's story, why the first and most pressing thing on my mind was, of course, how to not die myself. In the back of my mind, I also had to admit she wasn't exactly wrong. As I dashed through one hallway after the next, pointlessly trying to flee in order to buy some time, wondering if I could possibly manage to get my arm back before I have to confront her, I stopped to wonder, how many of her bunnies has she told this little story to? How many people heard these little stories before they died? Was this how it was all going to end for me? I thought to myself, doing my best to shake it out of my head. Didn't have time for that. Right now, you have to think about how to live. Live, Keven. You can consider the rest later. As long as you live. I thought as I turned down the next hallway, rushing down it as quickly as I could. This entire mansion dimly lit in moonlight that shined through the invisible ceiling above. As I tore my way down the hallway, in front of me, rounding the corner, standing on the ceiling, there was Alice again, defying gravity, even her hair seeming to stay normal looking, draping down off of her shoulders as it did when she was standing on the regular ground, except she was on the ceiling, rounding the corner with blade in hand, twirling it about playfully. You know, you're pretty fast, Mr. Bunny. Much faster than a regular human. Your blood does have sort of an extra something to it. It kind of tastes extra nutritious, like drinking an energy drink. It's just sort of got some extra kick to it. Where exactly does that come from? What are you, Mr. Bunny? Are you really human? She said, smiling down at me from the ceiling as she approached, and I stopped in my tracks, beginning to take slow paces back the opposite direction as I stared up at her. I mean, it's okay if you're not. I won't judge you, Mr. Bunny. To be honest, being a vampire wasn't really my choice. I was sort of put in a predicament. A life or death situation, you might call it. In which it was either become a vampire or die. And I didn't want to die, so vampire it was. Truthfully, when I first became one, I expected to feel different. I mean, sure enough, physically I felt different. I don't have a heartbeat. I drink blood. I have a rather voracious thirst for it, actually. But I expected to feel different on the inside, for it to change who I was, at least in some small way. But you know what the scariest thing about it was? I didn't feel any different at all. I just felt like me. The only thing that really changed was what I ate. I had to throw blood into the mix. Oh, and just in case you're wondering, Mr. Bunny, vampires can still eat regular food. I enjoy a nice glass of wine. Roast ham is delicious, as always. We just have to throw blood into the mix as well. So all of those stories that you've heard about vampires only being able to drink blood, it's just hogwash. We can eat whatever we want. It just doesn't satisfy. I can still have a piece of cake. The cake just doesn't fill my appetite. In truth, it doesn't matter how much of it I eat. The point of feeling full is beyond me without blood. That's the only real difference between my appetite as a human and my appetite as a vampire. Blood is the only thing that actually gives you that feeling. The feeling of full, she said, still taking slow paces in my direction, smiling down at me from the ceiling. So tell me, Mr. Bunny, is your arm better yet? She asked, as I turned around and began bolting down the other way, running from her as fast as I could. Oh, I guess that's a no, her voice echoed out. as I turned down the next hall, continuing to run. Man, there's got to be some way to get out of this. I can't just keep running. This entire place is basically hers. I thought to myself, I don't seem to be able to get away from her, no matter how fast I run. It's obvious that running isn't going to solve anything, but currently it's the only thing I seem capable of doing. Come on, Keven. Time to use that brain of yours. There's gotta be a solution. Some sort of way that you can turn this around. One arm or not. You're probably wondering how I keep finding you, Mr. Bunny. Her voice called out through the halls. Well, it's pretty simple. I can always hear you. First of all, that armor of yours, while it is surprisingly quiet, I can still hear you clinking around very clearly. It's not exactly stealthy, but even if you weren't wearing it, I can still hear your footsteps. And even if I couldn't hear your footsteps, I can hear your heartbeat, Mr. Rabbit. It's almost like a little beat. I could almost dance to it. So as long as you've got a beating heart, I can follow you anywhere. So no, I'm not cheating. It's not as if I can just sense you, regardless of where you are in here. That wouldn't exactly be fair. No, I'm simply following the sound of the beat, the rhythm of your heartbeat as you dash about. It'll always lead me right to you, Mr. Bunny. But I suppose I do have one more question. I haven't seen anyone wear a suit of armor in a long time. Are you a time traveler? Oh, or is armor coming back into style? It would be strange, but I'm not going to say I'd be against it. Even if I didn't really agree with Knight's sensibilities, I have to say, armor always looked pretty cool. That is what the kids still say, right? Cool. After a few centuries, you kind of lose touch. I don't really get out much. My husband's always nagging at me. No killing the wait staff. No randomly hunting people. So things get dull from time to time. But I still get to play with anyone who's, well, stupid enough to come for me. And luckily enough, there seem to be more than enough stupid people out there to keep me fairly well entertained. Like you, Mr. Bunny. You know what? You look pretty lonely, skittering about the halls. Maybe I should give you someone to play with. Someone a bit closer to your own level. You're probably really scared, because that armor is so easy for me to cut through. So let me give you something a bit more manageable. Emerge. Hysteria. Her voice exclaimed as I stopped in the hallway that I was running down, seeing a large pool of blood beginning to gather across the ground, bubbling out as if there was some sort of wellspring of blood in the wooden floor, as if there was a blood pipe that seemed to spring a leak, gushing out, forming a large pool in the hallway, as a figure began to crawl its way out of that pool of blood. The figure itself seemed female, wearing a long dress stained with blood, but its appearance was anything but normal. Though it looked like a woman, through its body, countless blades seemed to impale it from every direction. The way it moved wasn't human or natural. Twitches and jerks that were out of place as it moved about, pulling itself from the blood and beginning to step in my direction. It had a head, but I couldn't see anything beyond the long strands of hair covered in blood that hung from its head, covering all of its features so that you couldn't see beyond it. Long, gaunt limbs with sharp, jagged nails at the end for arms, as I saw it reach up towards one of the many blades impaling its body, grabbing the hilt of one of them, and with a very sickening sound, pulling the blade free as blood gouted from the empty wound. "This is my friend Hysteria. She's a nightmare spirit. She's from the realm of nightmares, as the name Nightmare Spirit might suggest," Alice's voice called out through the halls. "So, why don't you two play for a while? Let's see what you can do when you're a bit more evenly matched.